What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Go-Getter Show, sponsored by AFC Fitness in Philadelphia, brought to you by Sturdy Bros Productions. Today, we have an amazing guest that I've been waiting to get on the show, so finally got to have him here. Nate, how you feeling?
Feeling good. This one's going to be a good one. Let's get into it.
So without further ado, we got President and CEO of AFC Fitness, Matt Littman. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Sir.
Yeah, so just a little background. Matt and his team took a chance on Nate and I around 2 years ago, actually. It was June 8th was our first day, 2023.
Coming up.
Nate and I got done playing college basketball, and we were a little lost. We knew we wanted to start a basketball training business, but in this industry, you need a set gym. So I'm reaching out to every gym around the tri-state area, and by the luck of the draw, I found AFC Fitness. I reached out to Matt and his other guy, Matt Byer, and we hopped on a couple calls, and it's not every day that somebody takes a chance on a young, hungry, ambitious kid, and in this case, Nate and I. So before we get into anything about you, I want you to just talk about, because I know you do a lot, what makes you want to help young, hungry, ambitious entrepreneurs like us, because you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to give us that opportunity.
So I've been doing this 33 years. And other than my father, I really never had anybody reach out, want to help, want to mentor, want to do anything. It was just kind of, go get it. And through, as I've gotten older and matured through my 30s and 40s, now into my 50s, I've tried a lot of different things with whether it's programming or instructors or swim lesson instructors or baseball hitting coaches or basketball or trainers, whatever it may be. And what I've come to realize is that, go-getters, certain people have it and certain people don't. So you can go to all the school you want, you can read all you want, you can spout knowledge and do that. But if you're a hustler and a go-getter and you're going to grind, you can make it happen. And knowing the facilities that we have, the ones that grind work. For example, we had when the Phillies were in the World Series, I believe in 08.
08, yeah.
My boys at that time were 6 and I think like 5 and 6 and 7 years old. And they were playing t-ball, and so I said, "Oh, wouldn't that be fun to, convert the basketball court, put up some nets, get some hitting and pitching coaches." Everybody was in Phillies fever and all, and we had a go-getter of a guy, and next thing you know, we're doing $250,000 of baseball lessons out of nothing, just because it was hot. And we struck at the right time, but he was a go-getter, and he showed up for one kid, and that one kid became 3, who became 9, then he said, I want to do a pitching clinic and then a catching clinic, and it was great. He ended up moving to the shore. And we tried some other people out who, some were former major league pros. They just didn't put in the work. They didn't put in the time. They didn't want to show up for one client or for 2 clients. And that business, didn't go anywhere. And I've seen that in all different aspects. So to answer your question, when I see someone that I really can feel is hungry, willing to put in the work, we might give you bad hours or off hours and fill them, because if you can fill the tough hours, it's easy to fill the good hours. And so I've kind of made it's a side project of mine to, when I see that I can help, I enjoy it, and I see people, growing and building their business. It, makes me happy and nice to be a part of it. So there's nothing I want out of it other than just seeing an entrepreneur, get in there, kick some ass and build a business from nothing.
For sure. I think it's a good point you make, talking about, like, you could go to school for as long as you want and you can, sit through as many classes as possible, but really a lot of people either have it or they don't. And we see it a lot. We're trying to delegate some work here and there, and it's hard to find people that are, of the same mindset of us. So I think you brought a really good point.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. The first thing we want to talk about, I know you've mentioned to me when you first started, 12 to 16 hour days, Monday through Saturday, Sunday, rest for the Eagles. So take me back to those early days. I guess a couple questions. 1, how you got into the gym industry, and then 2, talk about the early days of building something, because we know how it is, like that grind of being here 6-7 days a week, 12, 16 hour days.
Yeah.
Take us to that time.
So
1993, right? Is when you started?
So I started 93. I was never a great student. I was working in high school 40 hours a week. I was a manager of Mrs. Fields Cookies in the Willow Grove Mall. So
Those are some good cookies.
Yeah. So I would rush home from school, right to work, get there at 3, work till 11, close the store, do the thing, key to the mall, go home, eat some oatmeal raisin cookies that I'd grab, watch Letterman and Johnny Carson, whatever, go to bed. So I was not a great student. And my parents were separated, divorced when I was 6 months old. So I grew up single family, single mother, whatever. And so I didn't have much, but I wanted things, and things cost money. So, back, I was selling soft pretzels in 5th grade. I was selling Tootsie Rolls and Blow Pops and Charms Pops. And then I had a crew of kids selling them in school. I was always
purebred entrepreneur,
doing what I had to do because I wanted that cool sweatshirt, or I wanted that, I would go to Filene's basement and get like the fake horse that had like one leg, it looked like polo, for $8.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always kind of hustling. College was fun. The books weren't for me. My father was in the women's clothing business for many, many years. Got out of that in the late 80s, and he was an Ironman. He finished the Ironman World Triathlon in Kona. He did many, many of those crazy races, but he was really into fitness. And in 1991, he found a gym that people had passed away, left it to their nephew. He went to the bank. Back then, you shake someone's hand, you get a loan. And it was primarily an aquatic center. Tons of water, biggest pool in the state of Pennsylvania. It was like 700,000 gallons of water. One of those pools that you see in the Olympics, like a real Olympic pool, and with like a 15-meter diving tower. It was pretty wild. Fitness at that point was really like your Gold's Gym or your Bally's, I don't want to say meathead type of thing, but it wasn't really mainstream. And there was a women's gym, there was like a co-ed gym and a women's only gym, and it was kind of like that. So it was primarily a swimming, aquatics type of place. And he was doing a lot of physical therapy and things like that. So he was able to buy the business right, buy the real estate, borrow the money, and that's, and he had this nice little business. So after I transferred to Temple because I was doing terrible at University of Hartford, just wasting money there. And all my friends were graduating, and they were going abroad, and they were going here, and they were going to law school, or wherever they were going. And I still had a semester or so left, and I just said, I'm not going to summer school and then do it. I just didn't. So my dad said, you know what? The sales manager, she's going on 3-month maternity leave. She's pregnant. Why don't you come in and you'll help? And I think I still have it somewhere. My first paycheck, it was $6.25 an hour, 1993, May of 93. So I guess I just hit my 32-year anniversary.
Wow.
He said, she'll train you how to sell, and you'll give her half your commissions, as that's her incentive to train you. And I'm thinking, I'm making $6.25 an hour. I'm giving this woman half my commissions. What I didn't realize is my father was building me up to either fail or succeed. Either to, bitch and complain or just do what I had to do. And these were the days you were selling memberships $700 down or $1,000 for 2 years. They didn't do it monthly back then. Everything was paid up front. So it was hard to convince a person to come in and say, yeah, if you join for 2 years, you give me $1,000. And it's like, and there were probably 8 or 10 salesmen or salesmen and women. And I was clearly the youngest, and I was the owner's kid. So he said, okay, well, here's your schedule. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. till 11 p.m. Then you'll close the gym, lock up. So I'd get home at whatever, driving from Northeast Philadelphia. And then Saturday, 8 to 6. And those are your scheduled hours. And by the way, here's a beeper, like a Sky Pager. I don't know if you've seen one of those.
I don't even know what that is, no.
it's
basically on call, right?
yeah.
Whenever
So it's
he
a little
needs it,
black
yeah.
thing you'd put like if you're a doctor or someone important.
Yeah.
He gives me one of these. I go, what? And then he would you would get a page, and it would put the number that you had to call. I'd be like, is he serious? And it was someone left the sauna on, or the girl at the front desk doesn't have her name tag on, or I used to be like, okay, like, but it's what it was. And so yeah, I had to bust my ass to this. So I started looking at like, what other things how can I add value here? Because I'm not going to be the best salesperson. And I looked, and at the front desk, the people are coming in and they're handing a little card with their picture on it. And the two people at the front desk, they'd file it and they'd put it in alphabetically. And then the person who was leaving would stop at the desk and they'd ask for their card. And I said, that's odd. It's like an old library. There's no computer to check in. And the computers were $4,000, God forbid, you know. And I remember I ordered a Dell computer. My father freaked out. And there was no budget. So someone would come in and say, hey, we need to paint the weight room or whatever, and it's $300. I got to go to MAB Paint. He would just reach in, and I said, what are you doing? He's like, well, it's my bit. It's left pocket, right pocket. What's it? I said, that's an expense. You should be able to write that up. It was just common sense to me, and so I started kind of implementing these things into the gyms, and I would sit through these sales meetings and just marvel at how smart and good these salespeople were. And I said to myself, I'm pretty good with people. And no, I don't have an office. I've gotten no formal training. These people have been doing this for a living. And so I raised my hand. I said, you know what? It was called Bonus King. And if you hit Bonus King, if you sold the most in the month, you got $1,000 bonus. I said, I'm going to be Bonus King next month. And I see my dad just like, shut up. Like, what are you saying in front of these people? You're and I busted my ass. I worked every single day to the point I was horribly sick. There were like three days left in the month. I was leading, and I was fever, sick, shivering, whatever. And I had to go home to mommy and daddy, and they were taking care of me. And it was the last day of the month, and I went in, and this guy Don, who worked for me for probably 20 something years, I said, I'm taking you down, Don. And I called every single person. I did everything I possibly could. I think I was $300 or $400 under him. I had sold like 30 something thousand for the month, which was a ton. I was a 22-year-old kid. And this guy comes in, Don leaves. He's like, I think I got you. I said, well, I'm going to stay. And no one's coming in to join the gym at 9 at night on a Thursday, right? This guy comes in to cancel his membership that he just bought. There's like a 3-day cancellation. He bought the other day. And I'm going, oh my God. And I basically just laid it out. And I said, listen, I said, you have a spouse? Said, yeah. I said, does she come here? No. And I said, well, maybe if she came here with you, you wouldn't want to cancel, and you guys can come, and this could be something you can do together. And so I saw him thinking, and I said, look, I got to be honest with you. I threw out the gauntlet and I said, I'm going to be the cash king for the month. And I just went there. And I was honest with him. And I said, and I want to win this month. And the guy gets out, writes a check, signed his wife up, and I won. Wow. So that's kind of how I got my start. And then I was only supposed to really be there, I guess, for the summer-ish. And then kind of he didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. And there you go.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a great story. So I guess I always think about bringing value to the audience. So I'm sure there's a lot of people watching who might be in family-ran businesses or in business with their father or their brother or mom or whatever. So how do you, I guess, go about that dynamic? And then was there a point when you broke off from your dad and said, I'm going to start this myself? Or like, where did you go from there, essentially?
So I kind of marched to my own beat. I'm not, and this isn't the greatest, I don't like to be told what to do.
I'm the same way. It sounds like that from you. Yeah.
I don't really follow rules. It's just, how I've been built. And so, no, I didn't want to be in a traditional family business where it's like, it's my dad's business and I'm kind of there. And I wanted to add value. I wanted to bring change, positive change. I wanted to show that I could, I could figure things out. I'm really good at that. And my father was more traditional, where there would be an obstacle and he would, very smart guy, but he would kind of go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like that type of mentality. And my thought would be like, all right, well, how do we get over this, through this, around this, under, like, I'm not going to just say, okay, I see the same issue. And so we had a really good yin and yang in that sense. And I think, he would groom me as much as possible. And a lot of that was, I'm going to make you work really hard, and I'm going to give you a lot of projects, and I'm going to be harder on you, and I'm going to yell at you, and if you quit, okay, it wasn't meant to be, but if you can take it, you'll be better off for it. And I remember him saying to me, I had a friend who was in a family business, and it was the traditional, the dad had this business, he put his 3 kids in there, the business did really well, the dad was kind of that down the shore doing whatever, these guys are making 6 figures doing nothing, whatever, and I'm like leaving the bar at 9:00 on Friday night because I know I have to be up, and I remember saying to him, this guy makes this much money and I'm only making, like, he's paying me. And he said, the difference is one day you'll know how to own and run a business. That's the difference. And that kind of stuck with me. But we kind of went along. There was another opportunity in New Jersey, and my dad put a lot of faith in me. He would, he'd say, hey, there's this location. I want you to go count cars. Count cars. He's like, yeah, I want you to go from this time to this time and count how many cars. And I want you to go from this time to count how many cars. And then come back. All right, there's this many cars, this many cars. And he was trying to figure out the traffic patterns of, that type of location. And he would bring me around to these meetings, and I wouldn't say anything. I would just listen. And half the time I had no idea what they were talking about, whether it was, with the bank, the accountants, with real estate guys or developers. How am I supposed to know any of that? But I just kept my ears open and listened and didn't say anything. And then I would ask questions later, and kind of always, that's kind of how I learned, is figuring things out. So found another opportunity, and long story short, in New Jersey. And that's really where I cut my teeth, where I think he wanted me to succeed or not make it. I was 24. We go into this new business that had failed. They were 6 months in arrears or something in rent. And so the landlord said, look, you can have the gym, you can have the equipment, and it was all crappy stuff. But there were members, it was revenue, if you just pay the back rent. So it was pretty financially, it was a good deal. We go in there, and my dad said, all right, you're now the general manager of both locations. I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to deal? And he said, so I need you to go fire the GM now. I said, fire this guy and I'm like, he's a wife and kids. And he said, yeah, fire him. Okay. I walked over, I said, sit down, and he was gone. And then fire this guy and get rid of this. And I had to reorganize and do all that stuff. And he now do this and did that. And I just did. And I remember the first person I ever fired, her name was Brody. And it was at nighttime, and I walked downstairs, and this was before I fired these guys, and she had the yellow pages open. You probably don't know what they are. And I've heard of them. She was looking for auto parts or something. And then she was on the phone for 45 minutes, wasting time. And I said something to her like, shouldn't you be working? Like, you're on the phone, you're in the yellow pages, and we're paying you. And this, so my dad calls in to check in. That's what he would do at 9:30 at night. He's calling me. And he says, fire her. I said, excuse me? He said, go fire her. I said, fire her. He said, well, she's been written up a few times. There's been issues, X, Y, and Z, and this is and it took me 45 minutes to fire her. And I didn't want to say my dad's telling me to fire you, because I didn't want to be that guy. But I was like, I'm so sorry. And then now we joke, I'm firing a GM in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Who had, that's just growth and how it goes. So that's where I really cut my teeth in New Jersey for those years. They were some hard ass years. But we started a personal training program, and I remember we had a concrete indoor basketball court. And the guys would bitch, my knees hurt, my back hurts, my this. But I was like, yeah, but it's a cool indoor basketball court. So we'd love like a better surface. So I researched this poured rubber surface. It was about $20,000. And so I said, Dad, for $20,000, we can get this rubber surface and market it to all these other people and get some older people in here and do it. He says, if you could find me $20,000, we'll put it on the court. I said, okay. So I went and I found about 10 guys or 10 people to give me $2,000 each, and had banners made, and I put them around the basketball court. I got the $20,000. I went.
Sponsorships.
I said, there you go.
Smart.
Then we bought this building in 1998 and another one in Jenkintown in I think 2002. And then at that point, my dad had kind of stepped away, but still owned 75% of the business. And that's when I started to kind of say, well, like, how do we make this more equitable? Maybe I should buy you out. And then I'm thinking, well, where am I getting money to buy them at? How am I doing, and all those different things. And it's also, it's a hard thing when you're dealing with your family, because you don't want to push anyone out or have them be felt that they're pushed out, and you want them to be, but then it's also, well, what have I brought to this business, and would this business be where it's at if I wasn't involved in the weeds doing those type of things? And so at a certain point, I had said, listen, I went out, I raised money, and I said, this is what I think the fair value of the business is, and I want to pay you. Just about 10 years ago. And, or I'm going to do something, I'm at that point in my life where I'm going to do something else. And I mean, this is my baby. These are my babies. I've grown, but I understand and respect that he started the company and he founded it, and he went on stuck his neck out and did all of that. So, as much as I helped along the way, we figured it out, and it wasn't easy. It took about a year of back and forth, but I was pretty, betting on myself that I'll figure it out. I'll make it happen, and I'll change the way the business looks, and looks completely different today than it did. And that's that.
Yeah. Talk about AFC and how AFC's grown in terms of, like you mentioned before we even started filming, the the wellness part of everything, and how you started to incorporate all the different sports. So talk about kind of that progression over the years, and where you got the business, and now where it's at today.
So it's one of the things I love so much about, I love what I do, which is it's a blessing, truthfully.
Can tell from the way you talk.
Yeah,
and you have to love what you do.
You do, but it's a very difficult. Dealing with the public is difficult.
Yeah,
it just is, difficult. And dealing in retail and dealing with. Yeah, I mean, think about how many employees we have and how many people come and how many people go. And I can't have high touch with every single person, because there's, and you also have to allow managers to manage and do their thing. And you have to, listen to their ideas or their people's ideas. It can't all be your sole vision. But one of the things I love most about this business, to your question, Nate, is it evolves and changes so much. When we first started, there was free weights. Like, the elliptical machine didn't exist. Spinning didn't exist. Yoga was something people did in like India. Like it was just a completely different business. It was more like that Jane Fonda aerobics type of, thing. And it was not mainstream. And so when we started, for example, the personal training program in Cherry Hill, that didn't exist. And I remember sitting with my dad, and I said, well, we get, there's the trainers, and you pay them $40. Someone's going to pay them $40 for the hour, and they're going to train them. And my dad, being an Ironman, was kind of, well, only pro athletes, like my dad had trainers, because he was training for, but the regular guy or housewife or person is like, but we started that business, and it grew into like a really, great business. Then when we, bought this location, I never played tennis. We had 10 tennis courts. 10. I didn't know anything about tennis. Hired a tennis director. Can't be hard. And figure it out. It's retail. It's people. We're selling a service. We're selling time. And so we'll have leagues and we'll have lessons and we'll have contracts and it's a new challenge, but it's kind of the same thing, just kind of rewrapped, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
And, constantly talking to my competitors and see, what are you doing? What's working? What's not? Sharing what I think is best practice with my competitors, because we're all we're in the same industry, and that's always served me well and been helpful, because you get stuff right back. You're not, those guys that be, oh yeah, I'm making all this, I'm doing this, I'm like, okay, so
Yeah.
Just looking at best practices and seeing how can I implement that here, or does that make sense here? And so, whether it's tennis or, we converted 2 of the tennis courts, one into a rehab pool for physical therapy and one into a basketball court. And we had the greatest pickup games here. That's when Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens would play, and like high-end league play. And then it got a little rough with some of the teams that were coming from Philly, and then someone pulled a gun at one point, and I said, okay, we're shutting this down. No more leagues, no more anything. And now I have this big empty basketball court, and then we started with baseball. So it's just constantly evolving, changing, seeing what's new, seeing what you can implement. This Padelphia is another example of, I had never played padel in my life. We had these 4 courts here, 8 indoor courts, and it was during COVID, and the tennis lease was coming up, and I'm sitting there in my office while we were closed for 4.5 months with no income and nothing, and just paying bills, and was getting calls from people. Hey, my kid needs to play basketball. We're stuck in the house. This is horrible. It's not good. And I had kids, everyone's at home doing Zoom. And so I'd have my kids come and play hoops here. And so I had this idea, well, what if I put some hoops courts down and then leased them out to different groups and different leagues. And these guys had come to me through a mutual friend, maybe 6 months prior to COVID. Hey, we want to take over, can we lease out 4 of your tennis courts? I said, no, we're good. We're busy. Tennis is great. It's all good. And my friend said, look, he's a really good guy. Can you just sit with him? And I said, okay. So I toured him around. They loved the place, and they want to bring this padel. I said, never heard of it. I don't play racket sports. And if I already have a racket sport that's working, why would I rip up my place and start a whole new thing? It just doesn't make any sense, and anyway, PS cut to 6 months later. I'm sitting in my office alone going, this is awful. So I put in a request for proposal online with an indoor sports of America company. And I figured, I'll get the architect to draw it up for free, because they'll do it in CAD for you and shit. And so I said, here's the measurements. This is what I'm looking for. How much would it cost to build 4 basketball courts? So the next day I'm home and I get a phone call. And I look at it and it's the Padel guy. And I'm going, what the hell is this guy calling me? This is crazy. Hello. He says, hey, how you doing? He says, how's it going? We chit chat for a second. He says, calling about the 4 courts in Ballackinwood. Now I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't tell my wife. This was just an idea. I was just sketching on paper. I'm looking like, is my room bugged? Like, this is so bizarre. And I'm like, excuse me? And he said, you put in a request for a proposal. And I'm thinking, how the hell is this guy? He said, do you know what I do? I said, I don't. He said, I own, for Pennsylvania, Indoor Sports Courts of America. It's because he does the padel courts, the basketball court, the whole thing. So now I'm going, oh God. So he's like, oh, so you're going to, what do you want to do? Do you want to do padel and the whole thing? And then PS, we met here the next day, walked through the whole thing, and he showed me some padel numbers. And I said, I think basketball really needs to be incorporated in this. It's important to me. And I know I can find good people, to do it. My kids are very involved in basketball, and we can make them convertible to volleyball or other event spaces for corporate events, bar mitzvahs, weddings, whatever, gatherings, which we have. And so this was born out of nothing. And then he brought in an MBA guy that was going to be one of the partners, and I was just going to be the landlord. And I said, like, what's he bringing to the table, just other than money? And they said, well, it's going to be his academy and this and that. And I said, well, it seems like a super nice guy, but how about we pass on him? I'll put in the money because I want to be a partner, not just a landlord.
Yeah.
And I'll find my own basketball guys, my own volleyball people, and go from there. So,
wow,
here we are.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, and I think it speaks to being adaptable as a business owner. And we talk about this all the time, like just fail fast, fail often, trying things. And sometimes things are going to come up one day that you never even thought of that completely transform your business. So like when you're sitting there in COVID and this just kind of happens, I'm sure that was crazy. But there's this concept, Alex Hormozy, I don't know if you're familiar with him. So he talks about 4 types of money. There's your savings that you already have. There's your income. There's debt you can borrow, and there's new money. And I think you're a perfect example of creating new money. So it's like you don't want to touch your savings. You don't want to touch your monthly income. You don't want to borrow. So I just wanted, I guess, you've touched on it a little bit, but like you seem to be a master at creating new money. It's like we have this space. I pay X amount per month. How do I create new money without borrowing or using my income or savings to do that? So I guess talk about that. Where does that come from? Like the adaptability of being able to create new money, or just, is there certain people you pick their brain for ideas, or is it you? Like, how are you always creating new money and innovating?
So I do have, I'm blessed to have some really good friends that are super successful in different industries that are great sounding boards. But I think I kind of look at space, when you own the real estate, it's okay. So I have this, I have my mortgage. Now, how am I going to create the most amount of dollars per square foot in that space by spending the least amount of money I need to? Now, sometimes you need to spend to make. I apologize.
You're good.
It's all good.
But like a perfect example is, I just thought of this. In the men's locker room here, it's huge. And it was just always, it's how it was. I wouldn't have made it that big if I designed it back in the day, but it was probably, this was like a steel warehouse, and then it became a tennis and squash place, and then it converted in the 70s into some fitness place. And then, so I'm looking at it one day and I'm noticing that it's probably 30-40% of locker room isn't used. And it was like some back storage space. So I'm thinking, what if I put up a wall and put nice like some cool lockers in there, a couple private showers, made it an executive locker room, and charge $50 a month for it. So now I'll have, 60 lockers paying me $50 a month, 30 grand, whatever in my pocket.
Yeah.
And it'll cost me maybe 30 grand to build the room. Okay, done. Like that's what I love doing, is seeing space and seeing, obviously dead space is no great space. Even you saw that we blew out the gym into the Padel area.
Yep.
That was on purpose. Of course, we created more usable square feet without actually increasing the footprint of the building. We did, but it's also now a marketing platform because the Padel and basketball people can look up and see, wow, there's a gym up there. You would never know that.
Right.
And vice versa. All of the members who are out there stretching or doing their abs or doing whatever they're doing with the trainers are overlooking this whole beautiful space saying, well, that's super cool. What is that? So
Play hand in hand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a great business model, and everything kind of ties into each other. So I guess moving on to culture, I'm big on, like, we're building a team right now. Obviously it started with just me and Nate, and now we got some guys over here that are helping us out. But how do you find, because you got 19 different things going on, 19 different streams of revenue, 3 locations. Where do you find these good people? How do you coach them up? How do you create that culture? Because the business doesn't run unless you got good people. You're just
100%.
You're one person. So talk about that.
So in my, let's say my last 10 years, I've tried to lead from behind, so to speak, because it can't always be my way. I can't be everywhere at once, and I don't always have all the answers. And there's other really smart people in the room or around that might have a piece of an idea or the whole idea, or they've done something before, or whatever it is. So I always listen to it, and maybe I take a piece of it, maybe I take some of it, I don't. But what I've found is if you train your smart, honest, hardworking, good employees, and move them up, let them replace themselves and just keep moving and growing, because then they've done all of those positions and they're going to be better. I'm not the one to hire a group exercise instructor. Like, that's not for me to judge, right? I'm not going to pretend, oh yeah, that's the this greatest movements, right? But I trust who, the person that is doing that has been an instructor, managed one location, then managed up to I believe 8 locations at one point, and so that's someone that I can trust to make those hires. My executive staff, my management staff, most of them did not start in those roles. They didn't. I mean, our chief operating officer here, I believe, he worked for me as a salesperson for a week in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, 25 years ago.
Wow.
But he came in and as manager, general manager, area manager, chief operating officer. Same with my chief administrative officer. She was my personal assistant. And I saw her working at a place that I belong to, and I saw how she dealt with the members. I saw how she dealt with nasty members. She was at a country club. And she always pleasant, always did the right thing. Oh, yes, sir. And so I went over and I asked, how much do you make? And I just saw something in her, and I said, well, come work for me. And I would bring her in meetings and, really to take notes or to remind me because I'm terrible with that stuff. And then she would often have these great ideas or insight and say, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And oh, okay. And I guess I was giving her the in to, give me that input, not feel she was overstepping. And then I said, well, why don't you do this? Or she would come to me and say, I know we were going to spend X, Y, and Z dollars on this stuff, but let me take a shot at it. Why should we pay for it? Okay. She did great and rose through the ranks. And now she's the chief administrative officer. So I really like, we just hired someone last week here as a membership representative that was in facilities. So I guess to answer your question, we try to look from within first and promote from within, and that builds brand loyalty, and the staff and the members love to see some consistency with the faces and the people that they see. So I'm not necessary, because if I'm necessary, there's a problem, right? I'm the one that you want to pop in and say, I haven't seen you in a while. And that's, because my team's all marching to the right beat. That's why we all went to the show I just told
Vegas,
you about. In Vegas, I brought 6 of us. And it's kind of like, would I rather invest in my people? Like, what's worse? Rather investing in your people and having them leave, or never investing in them and they never leave?
Right. I'd rather invest in them and build them up, and then if they leave, they leave.
Exactly right. Yeah.
It's a good point.
Yeah. So you obviously have had a lot of success and have gone through a lot of growing pains with the business. What advice would you give to someone that was looking to start up in the fitness and wellness industry?
Interesting. You mean starting a facility?
Yep, starting a facility, or just anyone that was interested in kind of starting where you did. What advice would you give to them, and what are the first steps they should look into doing?
I would highly consider going to work for someone for a year or two and learning what to do, what not to do, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what mistakes are being made, how can you fix things, because all too often, and probably in a lot of industries, but especially in health and fitness, because people think it's cool or it's, you know, fun. Just because you work out or you're in shape or you're an athlete does not mean that you should own a fitness center. And I can't tell you how many times I just say to myself, oh geez, this person, because I have a great idea and they're going to go borrow money from their friends. They're going to build this place. And it's like, what are you doing? You have no idea. It's, you know, so, you know, for me, whether it's, I happen to love what I do, but whether I'm selling basketballs or hats or tables or whatever it is, it's just my approach would be the same. I'm not doing this just because I love health and fitness so much. I love my business and I love the people in it, but that would be my advice is don't just say, hey, I want to buy a gym. I'm going to, you know, go buy a franchise. Like, I don't think that's the way to do it. Go learn and get knocked down. And maybe you're going to realize maybe I shouldn't own the business.
I love that. Yeah, I think just from your story with your father, it seems like he kind of threw you in the fire. And we just had Nick Bayer on, the CEO of Saxby's, and he talked a lot about the experiential learning platform that they have at Saxby's, where they literally hire student CEOs at these different colleges, and they run the whole business, the P&L, just everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of value in throwing people in the fire and just giving them that experience, and then also being okay with them falling on their face and failing.
Yeah.
So
my dad was amazing with that. I used to sit in some of these meetings and I had no idea what they were talking about. And then even the hours and hours and hours of like analysis that we would do on, so he didn't, I taught myself Excel and I had a laptop and the whole thing. He didn't know how to do any of that. So I would literally sit with him for hours and we would be looking at, let's say, a new project somewhere downtown or wherever it would be. He'd say, all right, let's say we're going to start with 800 members and we're going to average, you know, $79 a month. And we're going to do this and the expenses of that and this and that. I'd have an electric bill and I'd have this and I would just build these models out. And 95% of them never came to fruition.
right.
But it was all a really good learning experience, you know, for the next time.
Yeah. And I want to touch on, because obviously I'm a business owner and we have a small team of, call it 4 or 5 right now. So I know you have hundreds of employees right now,
Yeah.
and people under you. So talk about waking up every day, and you might have, I'm sure you have an assistant who makes your schedule for the day or gives you a daily schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about when you wake up and there's a fire, maybe firefighter, so to speak, as an entrepreneur. How do you go about that and stay calm through the chaos and realize that it is just like, do you ever get, I guess, angry or worked up, or do you say to yourself, it's just business, it's not that deep? Like, talk about how you deal with that, I guess, as when you have so much on your plate.
So that's a great question. Sometimes I feel like I should have been a Civil War general because when everything is blowing up and on fire and noise and this and that, I just see very clearly.
How do you do that?
I don't know if it's, I don't want to say I'm not a worrier. And that's why my dad and I were so good yin and yang, because he's Mr. Worries about everything. You can't worry about, like, worries like paying a debt on, or like it's paying interest on a debt you may never owe. Like, yeah, I can worry about a million things that could happen, but they might not happen. So why am I wasting my time worrying about that? It doesn't mean I don't plan, but I just think I react well. I say, okay. I mean, I've had people pass away. I've found dead bodies. I've had one of my buildings burned down with 80 people in it during the day, and ATF throwing me in the back of the car saying, you know, did you pay all your bills? Like, I mean, I've had the most wild stuff happen over all these years. And if you panic, if you freak out, it's no good, because everybody looks to the leader when things blow up. It's, what are you going to do? And you might not know, but you can figure it out. So it's like, okay, relax, we got this. And whether that means you need to talk to people you trust or counsel or your staff or yourself or God or whoever it may be, it's, if you panic and you freak out, no good. It just ripples right down to the bottom. So I wake up every day. I know shit's going to happen. You just deal with it and
I love that.
Move on.
I feel like we try to do the same stuff. I don't even want to add to that, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of like I don't know about a warrior, but I definitely I think things through a lot. Danny's more of like on the fly with things, just willing to just take a risk. So I think we kind of balance each other out.
Well,
pretty
that's important too,
Yeah.
because if you don't take a risk, you're not going to get anything. But you can't be a gambler and just. So they have to be calculated risks, and you're going to fail. And those failures, a lot of times, you're going to look back and go, oh, you know what, I should have done this, that, and the other. It's just going to make you better for the next time.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you control what you can control and go from there.
Yeah.
You always understand there's going to be shitty days, shitty weeks, shitty months where you're just like, the hits just keep coming. But if you allow it to beat you up, you'll get beat up. But you'll get past that, and then you'll have those sunny months where everything's just, wow, this is great.
Yeah. So obviously, we touched on it a lot. What's your proudest? How many locations does AFC have?
Now we have 3.
3. What's your proudest moment so far in owning the 3 AFC locations? Is it maybe opening one of them? Is it something you implemented at one of them? What's your proudest moment?
You know what? Actually, this is probably more recent, but just to answer off the top of my head, I think my proudest moment was maybe about 6 months ago. I was working out at our Radnor location, which is at that point 2.5 years old or so. And it was on a Saturday. It was on the elliptical, and I looked around, and it's bustling with people. The classes are full. There's people at the cafe. There's people working out, personal training, people chatting, high-fiving, doing their stuff, and the vibe and the energy. And for the first time, I said to myself, you built this from nothing during COVID when the bank wouldn't lend you money, no partners, nothing. And I had to be out of my mind during that time, but it was something I felt was confident in, obviously. I mean, I figured, all right, if COVID's going to take me down, I'm going all in. So let's build this whole Padel Center and let's do that. But I think that was the proudest moment when I just was like, I did it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's amazing.
Right after COVID, did you see like a spike in attendance at your gyms?
No,
was it a slow progression?
It was the most brutal thing I've ever been through. So the nuance of what was going on during COVID, you have to understand. You guys were in college, right?
I was a sophomore in college when
yes,
COVID.
I was a freshman.
So for you, it was like, oh, I guess I can't go out on dates, or I can't
Zoom classes and all that stuff,
and whatever. But it wasn't like real life stuff.
Yeah.
For me, this was something you caught from breathing on people or touching things. Can you imagine a worse industry to be in, where everyone's breathing heavy and touching everything, and I'm going, oh, this is, and we live in. Our governor shut us down for 4.5 months. Places in Florida and Texas, they were thriving. They're killing it. So, I lost, millions of dollars, and it was brutal because I made a decision early on. First, it was 2 weeks to stop the spread, and then you'll reopen. And then it was, now it's another month, and then it was another month, and so that was tough. And I made a decision to stop billing, which was the right decision, I believe, the members, because we weren't, it wasn't their fault we were closed. So when we finally were able to reopen, everyone just didn't come back.
Yeah.
I just didn't reactivate billing. You had to come and join again.
Yeah, that's hard.
So if you went from having X thousands of members so the first month I'm thinking, all right, I just spent, hundreds and hundreds of thousands at each location, all new carpets and all. We had the things that you'd spray all the lockers and the towels, and we had the things at the front desk, and we had the heat, the temperature, and all the different stuff. And we had lost most of our hourly staff because everybody was getting their IRS stimmy, staying at home, making a ton of money, doing nothing. No one to come into work. Like this many people came in. And then the next month, like that many people. And it took about 2 years to get back to where we were prior. It's pretty rough.
Wow.
For this business.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
They told you can exercise within a mask. And it's
Yeah,
like,
we had to play basketball
basketball
games
Yeah.
with a
and there's
mask.
people on the treadmills and they have it like here and then it's like hanging off the ear and then this one's yelling, put your mask on. And
Yeah,
it was
crazy times.
Yeah.
Crazy
but
time,
I'm
yeah.
glad you made it out of that. And
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you guys are thriving, and we love being here. So
I'm happy to have you guys.
just a couple quick hitters for you. Like, try to answer in 30 seconds or less. We always try to do this at the end as we're wrapping up.
Sure.
So, as a father of 3, a husband, and an entrepreneur, how do you deal with that? How do you balance the two? 30 seconds or less.
It's just all in the soup, man. It just is what it is. Like I'm present. I coached all my kids' stuff. I was at all their games. I'm a very present husband. They know when it's time to work and dad's got to like leave me alone and I got to do that. But it's all part of it.
When you start seeing success, was there a certain dollar amount that maybe you had in your bank account that you're like, all right, now I'm good? Or is it always like, I'm chasing this next number? How do you, as an entrepreneur, keep that hunger, even when maybe you see $1 million in your bank account when you're 30? I don't know. I'm just at like,
I never really set an amount. It was more of a comfortability type of thing because your amount's always changing. You know, when you're single, it's different than when you're married. Then you have 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids now. You know, I got two in college. I got this. You got it can't be. So it was never a number. It was just more of I want to be able to feel that I can support and handle and do what I have to do and think about my retirement and things I want to do for my children, you know, down the road. And obviously always make sure that I take care of the business because if you don't take care of the business, it doesn't take care of you.
right. Good answer.
Who's your biggest influencer on your journey in this industry other than your father?
In this industry, it's a good question. I'm not really like I don't follow anyone in this industry, so to speak.
Mentor.
I just like mentor.
Yeah.
I follow smart people that, you know, I would say like David Edelman is a very good friend of mine, and he has been an unbelievable sounding board and mentor, you know, through all parts of my life. But he has had different experiences in a lot of different businesses, a lot of different things that, you know, have worked out well or haven't worked out well. And so for me to kind of have a front seat to view a lot of those things and take maybe some of his lessons as my own, you know, for free, so to speak, has been really helpful.
Yeah.
It's really smart. They say you're only as smart as the people around you. So it's what we're constantly trying to do, just delegate and find people. Like, I'm not that good at the photo and camera, so I try to give that to Nate.
Yeah, and that's how to be.
So yeah, last question. We talked about your upbringing. We talked about building the gyms. Where does that go-getter mindset come from? Because you are clearly a go-getter by everything that you've been through. I know you said you and your father are very different. So talk about your environment growing up. Did that create it? Is it just something inside of Matt Littman that you were naturally a go-getter? I'm curious to hear that.
Yeah. I could sum this up really quick, and there's no sob story or there's no whatever. I always had food on my table and whatever, but growing up with a single mother, and she didn't work and we didn't have much, let's just put it that way. And it was probably 3rd grade. They called me up, me and 2 other people, to come get our free food voucher for free lunch in front of the classroom. I was mortified. And I guess my mother had signed me up for the whatever. And I said, no, you got that wrong. And she was like, no. I'm like, no. So I didn't eat lunch because I
Love that.
You know, but I was like, and that's when I started selling candy because I knew there was other kids who had candy. And then I graduated to Frank's Soda. And I would sell this kid Jeff a soda for $1.
Orange cream soda. Yeah, that's
I would buy for
shit.
20 cents, and I'd give him $1. I think lunch was like $1.05. You got like a milk, but at that moment, I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy. And whether people know it or not, that's, you know, so.
I love that.
Yeah. Growing up for me, like I'm in a very similar situation. I didn't know my biological father growing up, and my mom, she provided me everything I ever could have wanted. But I think seeing her want to provide for me has now inspired me to want to be able to provide for my family one day.
100%.
And that's what motivates me pretty much every day.
Which is awesome.
So, sir.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think that's all we got for you. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you. That was amazing. And if you guys are watching and you're near Bala Cynwyd, Radnor, Feasterville, make sure you guys get a membership at AFC Fitness. They got, like Matt was talking about, they got so much to offer. It's not just your show up, get a lift in. They got so many different programs, personal trainers. So anything you want to leave them, potential guests or potential customers.
Check our website out, afcfitness.com. New website's coming in about a month.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and leave a comment with what your favorite thing that you learned from Matt's episode. But we really appreciate you, and maybe we'll have you on again in a year and see how far we've come.
It's amazing. Keep up the good work, guys.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Awesome.